Hematology is one of those sections that I struggled with, and I'm sure that there are many of you who are struggling with it. Between disease states of the red cells, white cells, and platelets, I am cooked. But today we're going to do 10 practice questions in hematology, and I will show you how I think through some of these hematology questions. Cells as shown in this iron-stained bone marrow preparation are found in each of the following conditions except what? Alcohol abuse, chloramphenicol therapy, iron deficiency anemia, or thalassemia. Well, it looks like these are ringed sideroblasts. And it looks like this is, it says it's an iron-stained bone marrow preparation, so Prussian blue stain. Some type of sequestration of iron, I would think. Between alcohol abuse and iron deficiency anemia, I mean, well, if someone's iron deficient, you would think that there wouldn't be iron in cells in a bone marrow, right? So I might go iron deficiency anemia for this one. Yeah, that's right. Okay, this is a level 6. A sideroblast is a nucleated red cell that has increased iron present in the cytoplasm. The iron-staining particles in the mitochondria surrounding the nucleus of the red blood cells can form ringed sideroblasts. So this looks more like a ring sideroblast here. Sideroblastic anemia may be a component of myelodysplasia. Ring sideroblasts may appear in impaired production of the protoporphyrin following drug toxicities, chronic alcoholism, lead poisoning, the use of certain antibiotics, particularly chloramphenicol. Conditions of defective globin synthesis, including thalassemia, may promote sideroblast formation. Although the red cells in sideroblastic anemia are hypochromic, this condition is not the result of iron deficiency. Marrow iron is actually overabundant. So it's really like the iron can't be incorporated into the cell properly. So for me, again, back from the beginning, this is a bone marrow prep and there's iron. It's an iron-stained bone marrow prep. So we're looking at a Prussian blue stain. So if there is iron being sequestered in the bone marrow and it's not being incorporated properly, then it will stain on the Prussian blue stain. So in iron deficiency anemia, it's literally a lack of iron. Like that's the biggest thing about iron deficiency anemia. It's like, okay, out of all three of these, alcohol abuse, chloramphenicol therapy, thalassemia. So if there's no iron or a lack of iron in iron deficiency anemia, then we would not have iron staining on a bone marrow prep. So that's how I was able to get down to that answer. Which of the following ranges is the reference range for hematocrit for an adult male? 14 to 18, 12 to 16. Those are hemoglobin reference ranges, and it's in grams per deciliter. That's hemoglobin. Hematocrit is often expressed as a percent, right? If you think about packed cell volume, right, is your hematocrit. So the percent of the blood that is actually red cells. So in an adult male, you'd think it would be decently high. I'd like to say 40 to 52. I think 35 to 47 is female, and then 40 to 52 is male. Let's try it. Yeah, that's right. The reference range for the hematocrit of an adult male is 40 to 52. 14 to 18 represents the hemoglobin reference range for an adult male. 12 to 16 represents the reference range for the hemoglobin of an adult female. And then 35 to 47 represents the reference range for the hematocrit of an adult female. So think about that. I mean, men, bigger, stronger, more testosterone out, obviously more muscle mass, so they need more red cells. That's the way I think about it. I'm like, the reference ranges are always slightly bigger for a male than it is for a female. A WBC differential count on CSF should be performed using the following technique: a wet mount of sample from collection tube, a stained smear of a cytocentrifuge specimen, directly from a hemocytometer chamber count, or directly from a stained hemocytometer count. So a WBC differential, it should be cytocentrifuged. If we don't know what cytocentrifugation is, actually I'll look it up now. Cytocentrifuge. Because some people actually don't see this. I'm very surprised that some of my students, when I ask them, oh, do you know what cytocentrifugation is? They're like, no, I just know that you need to do it for like a body fluid differential, because they've never done body fluids in real time. A lot of labs are now sounding out body fluids, but this is a cytospin. This is the like the attachment that would go into the centrifuge. So essentially what happens is you get a slide and you put the slide back here, and there's a little circle, a white circle or tan circle, depending on the type of slide that you're using, the manufacturer. And you're gonna put a couple drops of your fluid into this little chamber here. As this begins to spin, the body fluid is gonna go through this tube and onto that little circle. So it's concentrated in that little circle. Sometimes you need to dilute it, sometimes you need to add more drops. It depends on how the turbidity or the cloudiness of that body fluid. But yeah, it will centrifuge for a certain amount of time at a lower RPM, because we don't want to like break the cells. Sometimes they add albumin to it to preserve the integrity of the cells, but this is what it would look like. And then it'll come out, cytocentrifuge slide. Oh, this is a good one. Yeah, here. So this is what the slide looks like. It'll come out with the body fluid here. Oh, this is a great one right here. you can really see this little like white part. That's the body fluid that was concentrated that went through the tube. Back to the question, a wet mount of the sample? No. Directly from the hemocytometer chamber count, when you're looking at a hemocytometer, whether it's stained or not, you can't do a differential. You would need to go at least 50x oil to do a differential on a CSF. So I would go a stain smear of a cytocentrifuge specimen, and that is correct. Differential counts on CSF should be performed on stain smears made from a cytocentrifuge specimen, as we saw. It distributes the cellular elements in a monolayer, making it easy to distinguish the cell's morphology when observed under the microscope. Cell type cannot be reliably assessed on an unstained specimen or from a hemocytometer. What are the cells that are indicated by the arrows in the image on the right? We have normal lymphs, hematogones, plasma cells, or monocytes. Well, the cytoplasm is quite basophilic and the nucleus is quite dense. They're a little too small to be a mono, and they don't look like normal lymphs because normal lymphs are smaller. Cytoplasm is not smaller. The nucleus is larger and the cytoplasm is less, and the cytoplasm is also a paler blue. I don't know what a hematogone is, but these are looking kind of plasma cell-y. Although the nucleus isn't very eccentric like I'd like to see with a plasma cell, that's the only one that might fit the bill for the morphology that I'm looking at here, so I'm gonna go with plasma cell. Okay, they are plasma cells. They are larger than normal small lymphocytes with more abundant cytoplasm. The cytoplasm is more basophilic, as I said, than the cytoplasm of a normal lymph, and a well-defined perinuclear halo, which is this right here, this little like perinuclear halo. Clearing in the Golgi area is noticeable. The nucleus is eccentrically placed. Plasma cells are counted in a separate category on a bone marrow dip. Hematogones are blast-like cells that are more mature than lymphoblasts. They're usually tallied with lymphs when performing a bone marrow dip. And then monos, we know, have a horseshoe-shaped or a lobular-shaped nucleus, loose chromatin pattern giving the nucleus a brainy or lacy appearance. So looking at like a real plasma cell under microscope, I'm going to show you what I think a plasma cell really looks like. This one, this is a good one. This is very plasma cell-y. These are very plasma cell-y. It's a perfect oval or circle, and the nucleus is eccentrically located, meaning it's not in the center, it's kind of off to the side. Sometimes it tends to like bulge out a bit. I'm trying to find one with that's kind of bulging out. This one a little bit, slightly, not so much. This is a good one right here. These, not so much giving plasma cell, but the only one that fits the morphology of what we're seeing here. Let's look up what a hematogone is. Hematogone under microscope. So they describe it as more mature than a blast. I mean, these look pretty blasty to me. I don't really know how you would differentiate between a hematogone and a blast on a bone marrow differential or a peripheral blood smear. I mean, I'm not a pathologist, so for me, I would just call other, or I would call it a blast and then send it for follow-up and review by a pathologist to determine if it's actually a blast or a hematogone or whatever it is. And then monocytes, we know what a mono looks like. Monocyte. This is a beautiful picture of a monocyte. Nice ground glass cytoplasm, pale blue-ish color. There's vacuoles. It's a larger cell, obviously. You can see in comparison to the red cells. The nucleus is horseshoe-shaped or kidney bean shaped. This is a good one. Horseshoe or kidney bean shaped. You can see that the nucleus, the chromatin is also kind of lacy, right? It kind of looks like a brain. Approximately 10% of the circulating white cells were similar to the ones seen in this patient. The patient is 42 years old, which visited his physician because of recent bruising. That's a very weird statement. Note the absence of platelets on the smear. Possible associated conditions include what? So this is giving plasma cell to me. A chronic infection. Well, if it was a chronic infection, I would see more neutrophils. Multiple myeloma, yeah, maybe. An active viral infection, I think I would see more reactive lymphs, and the reactive lymphs would be larger than normal lymphs with pseudopods. Parasitic infections, I would see EOs. So the only one that makes sense to me would be multiple myeloma, so I'm gonna go with that one. Oh, wow, interesting. Okay, so this says the intended response is a chronic infection. The featured cell in this image is a plasma cell. An increase in circulating plasma cells usually indicates a chronic infection or an autoimmune disorder in which an increase in plasma proteins is found. Although multiple myeloma must be ruled out, the cell on display is mature and benign conditions should be excluded first. Okay, LabCE. Okay. Although atypical plasmacytoid lymphocytes may be present in viral infections, an increase in the number of circulating true plasma cells, see image, would be unusual. Eosinophilia is an increase in relative and absolute eosinophils and is associated with parasitic infection. So now I know chronic infection, you might see a lot of plasma cells, and we would want to rule out some type of chronic infection before I jump to having multiple myeloma. The complete blood count was obtained from a patient recently admitted to the emergency room. The red blood cell indices obtained revealed an MCV of 115 femtoliters, where the normal range is 80 to 90, and that's on the ASCP content outline located here. The patient met the criteria for a peripheral blood smear examination. A representative field is shown on the right. All of the following conditions would be indicated by the results seen on this peripheral blood smear, except which one? So we have a macrocytic anemia happening. That's about all we're getting here, is that we have a macrocytic anemia. So hemolytic anemia wouldn't result in macrocytes. Myelodysplasia maybe. I think that would be more of like a microcytic anemia rather than a macrocytic. Yeah, I wouldn't think that hemolytic anemia would be, and I don't think that myelodysplasia would be either. Iron deficiency either. Liver disease, yeah, definitely we would see it in liver disease. Okay, so let's break this down, because I'm like, I think all of these you wouldn't see macrocytic anemia. I'm thinking B12 folate deficiency, I'm thinking intrinsic factor deficiency, I'm thinking liver disease, alcohol abuse. So out of all of these, I mean, dang, the only one that I would think of that wouldn't have a high MCV would be iron deficiency, because iron deficiency tends to be either normal or microcytic. Yeah, I'm gonna go iron deficiency. Yeah, that was right. Okay, so why hemolytic anemia and myelodysplasia? Why do they fit that? Each of these conditions can display peripheral blood macrocytosis. It's easy to observe the overall larger size in this image compared to the normal lymphocyte also present. When macrocytes are present, they should be examined for their shape, the hemoglobin content, and whether or not there are any inclusions. Okay, well, it's not really giving me any type of explanation. Like, I want to know the why. How would hemolytic anemia cause macrocytosis? Let's chat GPT this, because I don't really understand the pathology for this one. I'm just gonna take a screenshot of this and put this into my chat. Please explain the pathology of hemolytic anemia and myelodysplasia causing macrocytic anemia. Not understanding why the cells would be macrocytic in those cases. This is one of those ASCP concepts that's easier when you think about why the bone marrow is making cells, not just what the cells look like. In a hemolytic anemia, it's saying that there's macrocytosis, okay? I'm thinking schistocytes. In hemolytic anemia, RBCs are being destroyed prematurely, obviously. So the bone marrow goes into panic mode and starts pumping out retics to replace them. Reticulocytes are larger than mature RBCs, so enough of them circulating, the MCV goes up and the blood looks macrocytic. I hate it here. That was, Marilyn, you should have known that. Come on. In MDS, there would be macrocytosis. MDS is a stem cell disorder where the marrow is producing cells poorly and inefficiently. The developing red cell precursors have abnormal DNA synthesis and maturation, so the nucleus matures slowly while the cytoplasm keeps growing. The result is large abnormal red cells that resemble what you see in a megaloblastic anemia. So MDS is a defective factory producing oversized dysfunctional red cells, unlike hemolysis or in hemolytic anemia where the cells are larger because they're young. In MDS, they're large because the marrow is dysplastic, making abnormal cells. That makes sense. It says when you see macrocytosis, don't automatically jump to B12 folate deficiency like I did. So also think myelodysplastic syndrome or hemolytic anemias. An 8-year-old girl's peripheral blood smear is shown in the image on the right. Based on the peripheral blood image, what is a likely diagnosis? I mean, this one's pretty clear cut. There's sickle cells, target cells, and esocytosis happening. So the only one that would fit the bill here is sickle cell disease. If this was autoimmune hemolytic anemia, I would see a lot of schistocytes. In beta thalassemia, yeah, we would see target cells, we'd see a lot of NRBCs, but we would not see the drepanocyte or the sickle cell here. In hemoglobin C disease, yes, we would see these target cells. We would see hemoglobin C crystals in the cells. So just like I said, in autoimmune hemolytic anemia, sickle cells and target cells are not present. Possible findings would be spherocytes and schistocyte. In beta thalassemia, target cells would be seen, but not sickle cells. Also, the red cells would be microcytic and hyperchromic. Depending on the type of beta thalassemia you have, you're going to see more NRBCs. I think in beta thalassemia major, you see more NRBCs. In hemoglobin C, target cells would be present, but you would see crystals, hemoglobin C crystals, rather than sickle cells. If you don't know what hemoglobin C crystals look like, hemoglobin C crystals. And look at these bad boys. Yeah, these are really nice. Hemoglobin C crystals. Incredible. I don't think I've ever seen this in real life. I would love to see this in real life because it's quite the magic under the microscope here. Really, really tough for the patient. Very interesting to learn about when I was in school. Basophil's primary role involves what? Phagocytosis? Allergic reactions, long-term immunity, or fighting parasitic infections. For me, allergic reactions is the first thing that pops in my brain. I'm thinking of their granules, I'm thinking of histamine. Phagocytosis, no, that's more monocytes, macrophages, things like that. Long-term immunity, we're thinking B cells. Parasitic infections, we're thinking eosinophils. So allergic reactions is the only one that would fit the bill here. Basophils have a membrane receptor for IgE. When Ig attaches to this receptor, it causes the basophil to become activated and degranulate. As that degranulation occurs, the basophils release a series of granular components that orchestrate the allergic reaction. Neutrophils and macrophages are capable of phagocytosis, while lymphocytes are responsible for your long-term immunity, and then your eos are capable of fighting helminth parasites. A technologist is evaluating the red blood cell morphology on a peripheral blood smear. The image on the right is a representative field from the smear. The technologist has recorded the red cell morphology as macrocytic. Which MCV value would confirm this observation? This is kind of irrelevant. I know that my MCV reference range is 80 to 100, and so whichever one is outside of that on the higher side is going to give me macrocytosis. So 110 would be our answer, 72 would be microcytic, 85 is normal, 99 is like right at the higher end of normal but not macrocytic. Reference range is 80 to 100. See, now they're saying 80 to 100 where that other question they said 80 to 90. An MCV of 72 would be suggestive of microcytes, MCV of 85 and 99 would be normal. What are the abnormal red blood cells that are indicated by the arrows on this image? So they look like acanthocytes to me. Burr cells are more so like when you like push the slide inappropriately and you're seeing like even amounts of like little around like little, not spicules, because the spicules are like in acanthocytes, but projections if you will. They're not schistocytes because they're not broken, like they still have that circular state, and they're not sickle cells. Sickle cells are like in the shape of like a boat canoe. So I'm gonna go acanthocyte. So the difference between an acanthocyte and a Burr cell, acanthocytes, I'm gonna zoom in now. I didn't want to zoom in because on your actual ASCP exam you can't zoom in. An acanthocyte, there's little projections that come off of the red cell. They're not necessarily even. They're kind of just like random spikes. And this is something pathological, right? Acanthocytes. Where would we see acanthocytes? In severe liver disease, A-beta lipoproteinemia, neuroacanthocytosis, malnutrition, okay, all of this stuff. So acanthocytes can be pathological. If you see acanthocytes, something to make note of, you'd probably want to check the patient's clinical symptoms and clinical picture to make sure that you're calling those correctly. Now, a Burr cell, the difference between a Burr cell and a acanthocyte is that a Burr cell is normally due to you just making the slide, like either pushing too hard or pushing too fast. This is a very clear-cut picture of a Burr cell. This is what a Burr cell looks like, or these are what Burr cells look like. So you see how these projections are very even, and they're not so like spiky, like if we look back at our acanthocytes here. These are acanthocytes. Look at these spicules. Because I know a lot of students have issues with this, knowing the difference between an acanthocyte and a Burr cell. Acanthocyte, spicule, spikes, projection, thorny. Whereas a Burr cell, these are Burr cells. All right, let's see how we did. All right, so we got a 90. The only one that I got wrong was this one. So now I know that chronic infection has to do with plasma cells. We want to rule out something less severe before I go ahead and jump to multiple myeloma. But now I know plasma cells you might see in someone with a chronic infection. So I hope you enjoyed today's little study session of hematology. I hope that you got at least something from this. I'm going to be doing more of these. The next one will probably be in chemistry. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please comment on this video, send me a message. And if you like the way that I teach, you like the way that I go through things, I do this every week with my community on school. It's a community of MLS and MLT students who are studying for their board exam.